Welcome to this rapid revision video looking at Hitler's early life and the early years of the Nazi Party. We'll be covering the period 1889, Hitler's birth, to 1920, when he joined the Nazi Party. Hitler is shown circled in this photograph here, in a military uniform. He served in World War I, and this would form the blueprint for much of his life. This baby photograph is surely one of the most famous in the world, and it is of course the young Hitler. It's difficult to read too much into someone's early life when trying to learn about their later motivations, but some parts of Hitler's early life can be quite illuminating, so we're going to have a very brief look at them. Adolf Hitler was born in Braunau am Inn, Austria in 1889. He was the son of Alois Schicklgruber/Hitler, he went by both names, and Clara Putzel. His parents were first cousins, once removed. This was legal, but it was unusual even at this time. Alois was abusive to both his wife and to his children. Clara, on the other hand, doted on the young Adolf, having had several miscarriages and other children die young. He was an indifferent pupil. He seemed to have some talent for art, but no great intellect. He didn't actually finish secondary school. So a particularly unremarkable start to life, even if it did have some elements of tragedy. The next stage of Hitler's life is really marked out by failure. Hitler had sought to pursue an art career and applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, which is pictured. He failed the entrance process twice. It was suggested he study architecture, but he lacked the school qualifications to do so. In 1907, aged 18, Hitler's mother died from cancer. Hitler was distraught. His life fell apart and he often slept rough in Vienna. It is possible at this time he began to develop his anti-Semitic views, which were common at this time in the city. In 1913 he finally inherited the rest of his father's legacy and used the money to move to Munich, Germany. Some of Hitler's paintings are included on this slide here. At first glance they might look quite accomplished, but actually closer inspection shows that they really aren't that good. The top one, you can have a look at the pictures of the people there. The people do not have much movement. There's not a great deal of perspective either. As for the mountain scene, again, there's not a great deal of interest or command of light and colour. So it's probably justified that Hitler was turned down by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, even if for world history, that's a bit of a tragedy. The next stage of Hitler's life did a lot to define his future philosophy. Hitler saw his chance at a better future with the outbreak of war in 1914. As he had wanted, he enlisted in the German army and not that of Austria-Hungary. Some historians have suggested that Hitler was a brave soldier. He was awarded the Iron Cross First Class for his dangerous role as a messenger. And he was wounded twice, including with gas in 1918. However, more recently this view has been challenged. Hitler does not seem to have been popular with his comrades, being something of a complainer and a loner. Hitler was never promoted beyond the rank of Gefreiter, which is roughly equivalent to private in the British Army. This is a low rank, one of the lowest. A soldier of Hitler's unusually long experience would normally become a sergeant or Feldwebel. Hitler was wounded in October 1918 and he missed the closing stages of the war, which could be important. He therefore firmly believed in the stab in the back theory, for the German army had not truly been defeated, but it had been betrayed by revolutionaries at home. Perhaps his lack of being able to see the actual last stages of the war influenced this view. Immediately after the war, Hitler experienced something of a political awakening. Hitler already had nationalist and anti-Semitic views at the end of World War I. These don't seem to have been challenged by the fact that his superior officer in the war was Jewish, despite Hitler speaking highly of his commanding officers during the war. In the chaos of 1919 Germany, Hitler began to attend the meetings of the fringe DAP, German Workers' Party. The party was tiny and poor, but Hitler agreed with their views. Well, he agreed enough to join anyway. By 1921, Hitler had taken control of the party away from its founder, Anton Drexler, and reorganised it into the NSDAP, that's the Nationalsozialistische Deutsches Arbeitsparty. And there you can see the origins of the name Nazi. Soon Hitler began to have an influence on party policy. In February 1920, Hitler and Drexler wrote down the party's basic beliefs. They called this the 25-point programme. Here are some extracts. We demand the union of all Germans in a greater Germany. We demand equality of rights for Germans in dealings with other nations. We demand land and colonies to feed and settle our people. No Jew may be a member of the German nation. The state must promote the work and livelihood of its citizens. All citizens must have equal rights and equal duties. We demand a law to take from the owner any land needed for the good of the people. We demand the creation of a people's army. We demand the creation of a strong central state power for the Reich. These different aims can seem a bit muddled. For example, there's talk about citizens having equal rights, and then talk about Jews not being a member of the German nation. So clearly, this is not really equality. But why is it called the German Workers' Party? That sounds rather socialist, and yet Hitler is a nationalist. You might be detecting that actually there's a real mixture of views here. So was the party both nationalist and socialist? The NSDAP was a far-right political party. However, they aimed to attract more votes by including some outwardly socialist ideas where it suited them. Historian Stephen Lee stated in his 1998 book Weimar and Nazi Germany this: "The programme contained policies which may be described as either nationalist or socialist or both. The nationalist policies emphasised race, expansion, the army, power and relations with other countries. The socialist policies were to do with state controls over the living conditions of the people and the economy." So let's take a few of them. Here we've got the 25-point plan extract that we had a look at earlier. Now we're going to do some colour coding. These might be considered the nationalist terms. We demand the union of all Germans in a greater Germany. We demand equality of rights for Germans in dealings with other nations. We demand land and colonies to feed and settle our people, and no Jew may be a member of the German nation. But also these. We demand the creation of a people's army. We demand the creation of a strong central state power for the Reich. These, on the other hand, are distinctly socialist. The state must promote the work and livelihood of its citizens, and we will take from the owner any land needed for the good of the people. But this one here, this one seems to be a mixture of both. All citizens must have equal rights and equal duties. So people have their rights promoted, supposedly, but in return they owe duty to the nation rather than as individuals. That's very much more nationalist. It's at this point that the party structure was adjusted. As well as becoming the NSDAP in 1920, Hitler also set about reorganising the party structure to make them more distinctive and popular. This was also the time that the straight arm salute and the swastika logo were adopted. At the top of this structure was the Führer, or leader, Adolf Hitler himself. He had by this point displaced Anton Drexler. Then there was the senior party leadership: Rudolf Hess, Hermann Goering, who was a swashbuckling former World War I fighter pilot, Julius Streicher, who was a publisher of a newspaper, and Ernst Röhm, a scar-faced former soldier who was very popular with working-class former soldiers too. He became the leader of what was called the SA, or Sturmabteilung, Hitler's stormtroopers. Also, there was organisation of propaganda. The Nazis bought the Völkischer Beobachter, the People's Observer newspaper, and increased its popularity. Streicher's Die Stürmer, or the Stormer paper, backed this up. The Nazis were also fans of using violence to get their way. The Nazi paramilitary force was the Sturmabteilung, led by Ernst Röhm. They were known as the SA for short. They wore brown uniforms and were a visible and intimidating show of force for the party, clashing with communists. They also impressed people by parading with military discipline. They numbered 800 members by 1922, but this was only the start, as we will see. Our final points then. How Hitler came to become a member and then leader of the Nazi Party can be traced back to his early life. Hitler was not a successful young man. He had a difficult upbringing with personal tragedy, and he had failed in his ambitions as an artist. His service in World War I brought him a sense of patriotism and pride, though opinions are divided over his quality as a soldier. He was devastated by the end of the war. Like many nationalists, he believed in the myth of the stab in the back. In 1919, he joined the tiny German Workers' Party. By 1921, he had taken over the party, changed it to the Nazi Party, and drawn up a basic manifesto of ideas. The Nazis had a leadership structure, propaganda papers, and a paramilitary arm, the SA. By 1923, they also had 50,000 members. However, power for the Nazis was still a very long way off. That's the end of this rapid revision video, and if you enjoyed it and found it useful, please do drop the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I'm not going to lie, these videos on the Nazis are going to be quite difficult to monetize, so anything that you can do to help get the word of the channel out there would be tremendously supportive and make this whole exercise much more worthwhile, as I know that the YouTube algorithm will get that little bit of extra help in promoting these videos so more students can get help. So please do help if you can. Other than that, thanks very much for watching, and I'll say goodbye.